I was absolutely horrified to read that a minke whale had drowned to death after its capture for an experiment. It happened in the night between June the 2nd and 3rd off the coast of Norway. The whale had become entangled when a barrier line had broken free due to bad weather. So what exactly is this experiment? Well, on further investigation, this is what I found out. The experiment started in 2021 and is to take place over a number of years. It entails adolescent minke whales being captured during their migration to their Arctic foraging grounds in the Barents Sea during the late spring and early summer. The whales' migration route takes them past two small islands. The entrance to this is blocked with barrier nets once a whale has passed. A marine mammal vet observes the whale to see if it is healthy enough to experiment on. If it is, another net is deployed between two boats, and the whale is then herded into a modified salmon cage, which is again netted. The whale is then trapped there. The net of the salmon cage can then be pulled up under the whale to create a hammock. This is called the test basin. The whale is then tested upon. Whilst being held for up to 6 hours in the hammock, the whales are subjected to a hearing test using a method called auditory evoked potential, or AEP for short. The aim being to produce the first ever audiogram of a baleen whale, which is a hearing sensitivity curve. The hope is that this can be used to make recommendations about the exposure of baleen whales to anthropogenic noise. The AEP test is used in humans, even on babies, and involves the subject being given an auditory stimulus and the electrical signal produced by the brain in response to this stimulus is detected. It gives information about how the sounds are passed from the outer ear to the brainstem and are usually carried out to diagnose disorders of hearing or the brain. It involves the subject wearing headphones and electrodes on the head, which are connected to a computer recording the nerve responses to the stimulation. If that did not work well on the whales, then subcutaneous sensors are going to be used. These are small needles placed underneath the skin and into the blubber layer. The size of the needle is about the diameter of an acupuncture needle. The Norwegian Food Safety Authority, who approved the project, have stated that the whales are likely to experience short-term moderate pain, suffering or distress, or long-lasting mild pain, suffering or distress, and that moderately severe experiments of this kind are likely to cause moderate impairment of the well-being or general condition of the animals. The whales will be sedated if necessary, and before the whales are released, it has a satellite tag placed on it so that researchers can ensure it continues on its migration safely. Whilst in the test basin, there are vets on hand monitoring the health and welfare of the whales throughout the procedure. Its heart and respiration rate is monitored with electrodes, and periodic blood tests are taken and processed on site to monitor blood indicators of stress. If the whales are in danger or distress, they are to be released. The first field season of this experiment took place in June 2021 in an area which the scientists called the catch and release site, and focused on making sure that the whales could be caught and released using a system of nets. Nearly 2 kilometers of netting weighing more than 20 tons were deployed. 3 whales entered this site and 2 were safely caught, demonstrating the feasibility of containing whales once in the site. No hearing tests were performed on the whales at this point. However, even the capture of the whales is controversial. An open letter to Norway's Prime Minister, signed by 50 international scientists and vets, called for the project to be cancelled. The scientists were very concerned by a number of aspects of the experiment, one being the capture and length of experimentation, which has significant potential for causing injury and stress, and potentially resulting in something called capture myopathy. This is where animals who undergo extreme exertion, struggle or stress suffer from muscle damage which can be fatal. They were also concerned about the possible sedation of the minke whales. Not much is known about sedating or stunning wild whales and dolphins, and it could be life-threatening, and so is rarely attempted. The letter goes on to say that given the hearing tests take place under such unnatural conditions, when compared to how the minke whales would respond in the wild, it's difficult to see how any meaningful data could be collected to enable them to produce recommendations about the exposure of the whales to anthropogenic noise. Concern was also raised that non-target species could become trapped in the nets, resulting in injury or death. The second field season took place in 2022, where the scientists were able to capture 2 whales of the correct size. When the first whale was corralled from the basin into the salmon cage, it managed to escape. The technique was improved, and the scientists were then able to get the second whale into the salmon cage. The whale was in the test site for a total of 26 minutes before being released. Once the whale had started to be handled, it became very stressed, and after discussion with a vet, it was decided to let it go without having undergone a hearing test. At this point in the timeline, plans were being made for the fieldwork in 2023 so that the whales would not become too stressed during the procedure, and adjustments in the catch and release site would get more whales into the site. The third field season was this summer, 2023, and as we know from the news reports, it had a tragic start. Severe weather with gale force winds and extreme tidal currents damaged the testing site, and when the scientific team went to assess the damage, they discovered that a minke whale had become entangled in a barrier line that had broken free and drowned. The project was put on hold while the incident was thoroughly reviewed, and whether the project was to continue would be determined as part of the review process. A statement on the 9th of June reported that the research team had strengthened the facility to prevent new accidents. Unfortunately, the trials have now resumed. This really saddens me. I really hoped that the death of the minke whale would mean that the project would be cancelled, but that is not to be. So why do some scientists believe it is necessary to subject whales to this process? What exactly do they hope to achieve? Well, they wanted to address a knowledge gap that is critical to protecting baleen whales from man-made ocean noise. The hope is that the information from the study by federal regulatory agencies, scientists and conservationists to improve the management of ocean noise issues and their potential impacts to all baleen whales. This is an important issue. It has been estimated that the amount of anthropogenic sound in our oceans has increased tenfold in the last few decades. This sound is coming from things such as cargo ships, recreational vessels, fisheries, our search for oil, and for military purposes. Baleen whales, like many other forms of marine life, use sound to communicate with one another, navigate their environment, and forage for food. High levels of anthropogenic sound hinders their ability to carry out these everyday tasks, and it is documented that it causes humpbacks and other species of baleen whale to feed less and produce fewer calls. And in right whales, yet another species of baleen whale, it is documented that shipping noise increases the amount of stress-related fecal hormone metabolites. As mentioned previously, anthropogenic sound in the oceans is undoubtedly an important issue, but there is already a lot of observational data. Do we really need, at the expense of the well-being of these minke whales, data which is most probably meaningless given the artificial and extremely stressful environment in which it is gathered? In my opinion, the money that has been spent on this project would have been much better spent on research and development into technology which would reduce the level of anthropogenic noise being pumped into the ocean. My hope is that the whales are released before they are tested upon and that the whole project is shut down. If you have enjoyed this video, then please like, subscribe, and share with your like-minded friends.